It seems like none of my friends have questions, but I have a ton all the time. Did I write this question? Is it okay to question your faith? What should I do with those questions?
Whoever wrote that should pat themselves on the back.
Right.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Ty just patted his back.
That's good.
Yeah, if you feel like you were the person who has all the questions, and I think you're actually taking your faith seriously. I mean, one of my pastors growing up, he would, it was kind of like, he would do these salvation calls, and every single time I felt like I didn't know Jesus, because it was just so intense, and I was like, oh, maybe I don't have Jesus now that you explain it. But he would always say, you need to know that you know that you know what you're talking about in your faith. And I so appreciated that, because like I knew at a very young age, no, I need to know what I'm talking about, and I need to know what I believe in, because it will affect someone else. Like what you believe will affect everyone around you. And so, especially as teenagers, I mean, they're already learners. Like, they're already in school, they're in a platform where they're learners. It should be no other way for your faith too. You should be doing every single thing you can. Ask every single question. Ask your weird questions. Ask the question that nobody else wants to ask. Ask the question that, maybe you don't even know the full question that you're asking, but you just need to talk about it. Like that is what helped me form my faith. I was, at a very young age, I was afraid to ask questions, and then by the time I was a teenager, it's like, if I don't get some of these questions answered, I'm done. It's not worth it to me. Why would I uphold these rules? Because when I was a teenager, it was do not have sex before married and do not drink before you're 21, or you're going to lose your salvation. That's what they would always, joke with us about that. And but I just remember, no, if I'm going to uphold this lifestyle of a Christian, I better know why.
Right.
And if I don't get my, questions answered, I will. I'm just going to do something else. But now that I know, the answers to some of those questions, I'm like, there's no other place I could go outside of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be in to ask questions, because you're in a group of people who's asked questions all throughout this book.
Right.
Everybody, every hero has asked the questions. Moses says, wait, not me. Surely it can't be me. It's got to be my brother. He's a better speaker. Then you got Habakkuk, who's questioning God and like, wait a minute, you're going to destroy us? You know what I mean? Like he was angry. He was asking those questions. And when you ask those questions, guess what? You're going to find the answers. And a lot of times people find the answer is God.
I think that sometimes, this is going to sound like I'm being snarky, but I think sometimes people they're not necessarily afraid to ask tough questions. They're just lazy about it.
Yeah.
So it's not this sort of like fear of like, oh, God's going to be upset. It's more just like, well, I already believe. Like, what else do I need? And I know a lot of people who I feel like inadvertently kind of build a house of cards out of their faith, because they believe in Jesus, they believe in some sort of version of Christianity, but they've never asked those kinds of questions that help solidify what you believe. And it just gets real easy for people to come in and go, here's why you're wrong, and knock your house of cards down. And so I just feel, I always come back to two things when it comes to asking, because I'm someone who asks a lot of questions of God too, and have gone through long periods of my life where I was asking a lot more than I felt like I was answering. But I always am encouraged by this idea that we have the Holy Spirit living in us, right, that helps us translate things. So spiritual things that shouldn't make any sense, he can make sense to us. So I always come back to that. And I love this idea that God cannot be mocked. He can't have his feelings hurt. He can't be like annoyed by your question. Nothing is like out of line to ask him. And so I rely on that. Boy, I make use of that a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, another part of the question, so same in the realm, but is it okay to question your faith?
Doubt, I'm assuming that's what that means. So, yes, like you're testing your faith to see if it's real. Like that's okay to do. Scripture tells us to do that. I always go back to that. I go back to the fact that every single disciple that followed Jesus for 3 years doubted that he, not just doubting Thomas, but every single one of them, like literally doubted that Jesus was who he said he was. His family didn't believe that he was the Messiah. Like they doubted it. And it wasn't until after the resurrection that they believed. And so they doubted even in the midst. They're walking with Jesus. So like if people who walked with Jesus on this earth had doubts that Jesus was who he says he was, then I think that we're going to have some doubts along the way. My story is all about doubts. My story, I walked down an aisle, 6 years old, prayed a prayer, started doubting right after my grandma died. And I wrestled with that doubt for 2 to 3 years, I believe, after she had passed away. And I remember nights not being able to sleep. And here, I got real with it. And Jesus met me where I was at. Jesus always meets us where we're at, not where we want to be. He always meets us where we're at. That's what he did. He met Thomas where he was at, in the middle of his doubt. And Jesus, through those times for me to ask questions, those doubts I did, like I tested my faith, and I did not have faith. And I gave my life to Jesus August 20th, 1998, in my living room in Harrison, Arkansas. Like, to this day, can remember that all. That's where Jesus did that for me and turned my doubt into belief. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, my story isn't different because of that. My story is that still at the end of the day, Jesus proved that he was who he said he was to me, and it became personal for me. So I would say that's the big thing, like for us. Like, don't let doubt keep you out at all.
Can I ask one last follow-up
Yep.
question? What should I do with those questions? So for the person who's asking this,
Yep.
ton of questions, what do I do with it?
I say you got to wrestle with it. Like, that's the first thing. Like, first off, get it out of your mind and put it down on paper. Like, I hate that. Like, sometimes I drive myself crazy with the questions that I have, and I'm like, oh, I thought I asked God that. No, I'm just like set it in my mind. Mm-hmm. So actively putting it down on paper and telling God, like, here's what the question I'm wrestling with. Let me write it down. Put it down and let it be. Like, let God answer it. Take it to someone that you trust, and like an adult leader. We got adult leaders all over this place that honestly could help you out, or they could get you in the right conversation with someone. So I say write it down. Surround yourself with other people. I think even too, you got to be okay with even God might not answer your question, because that's what faith is. So is your faith dependent on the answer, or is your the answer to the question, or is your faith dependent on the one who is the answer, which is God? And you're going to say, hey, I'm going to walk by faith even though I don't have this answer. You'll be okay with that. And then there's some questions that God just says, I'm going to answer. And write it down. Like, literally, I think we forget oftentimes when God answers the question, or like, then we can have more questions like, well, God can't handle. No, dude, like, he just answered your question last week, but you just forgot. Write it down so you can go back as a monument to, my God is a God who answers my questions. He cares about me, that I have this. So, I mean, like, those would be the 3 things I would say.
Yeah. I always tell students, well, really, I'd say this to anybody, but all your doubts, your things you're wrestling with, your tough questions, there's nothing off-putting about those things. But take them to God.
Yep.
Don't let those things make you pull away from God, right? Because that's where we get in trouble, is thinking sort of rationally, oh, I have all these questions about my faith, I need to go get answered somewhere else. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but don't do it. You know, I've made it through the rockiest parts of my faith journey and come out with my faith intact because of that. Simply because whatever garbage I was dealing with, I wasn't afraid to go ahead and take to God as a starting point. And he's just so kind, and he's just so tender to like help us deal with those questions. And it's just, the outcome is going to be so much better than if you think, I've got questions about God, but I'm not going to ask him. I'm going to go take it over here and go into research mode and come up with my own, belief system.
And like, you can do that though. Like, it's got to be like secondary. Like, because there are some good websites like that you can go to. I'm trying to remember the website off the top of my head. Not Google. Google will get you a lot of.
Wikipedia? I don't know.
Facebook. I want to say it's like I got questions, and they actually approach it like you have certain questions that you ask where they give it a biblical response.
Gotquestions.org?
Yeah, something like that, maybe. Is
I
that
like
right?
that one.
Yeah, gotquestions.org.
Usually
There
on
we go.
top of Google. So.
Yeah, it usually is.
Yeah.
So you're not
But
wrong, Paul.
like, but it's about both and. Like, yeah, take it to God. James says, if you lack wisdom, ask, but believe.
Yeah.
Same time, so you will receive. So if you don't know the answer, something that's okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think it would also be good to mention that that's probably everyone here's favorite thing about youth ministry is
Yeah.
when a student is finally courageous enough to start asking their questions, and we can have these conversations and hear about like where they're at
Yep.
and you know and kind of how they're thinking. I don't think there's like anything more fun for me outside of a salvation conversation than to answer some of these tough, or you know, try, you know, because sometimes I don't know the answer, and I'm like, well, let's figure it out together, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe, and it helps my, you know, helps my faith grow,
Yeah.
you know, when a student asks a question too.
It kind of puts you on research mode.
It does,
Some of these
yeah.
questions are hard.
They are.
Oh,
Right.
let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I go into research mode. And they ask questions that I don't even think of. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about student ministry is all the pizza. So we don't
Hold on a
T-shirts.
second. I thought it was gonna be the t-shirts.
T-shirts.
John Bishop loves t-shirts. He loves the t-shirts.
We got to stop making T-shirts for everything, guys. It's ridiculous.
Fanny packs.
Sorry, fanny packs would be
Fanny
great.
packs.
Fanny
That's
packs
gonna be
would
my if I can
No.
submit. Ty, can I submit questions for
No.
next time we do this?
We're
It's
gonna
gonna be
know.
would Jesus approve of how many T-shirts we print?
It kind of goes on in one flow of questions.
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
We will be
We
answering
will
something
do
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is that all
I
we
can't
got
wait for
questions
your
wise?
answer.
I can't wait for
Yes.
your start. Yeah, I think we're done.
No,
Yeah.
that's fun. Hopefully you guys have fun too.
Yeah.
But yeah, appreciate you guys.